James spun around, his face red with stress. He looked at his expensive watch. "We don't have time for this. Where are the real mechanics? These are the real mechanics. You're supposed to be gone by now." David felt his stomach drop, but he stood firm. He knew that clicking sound. It wasn't the fuel pump or the fuel lines, it was something simpler, something that required understanding how older aircraft systems worked with newer technology. Emma Davidson had been watching everything from a distance. She stepped forward now, her heels clicking on the hangar floor. The hangar fell quiet as everyone turned to look at her. "Let him try," she said firmly. James opened his mouth to argue, but Emma raised her hand. "James, we've been trying for 30 minutes. Our regular mechanics can't find the problem. Let's see what David has to say." The other mechanics looked surprised and slightly offended. Robert put down his diagnostic computer, crossing his arms over his chest. "What do you think is wrong?" Emma asked David directly. David took a deep breath. "There's a secondary relay. Switch between the fuel pump and the engine. It's an older part that your diagnostic computer might not detect. When it starts to fail, it makes a clicking sound like the one I'm hearing." "Ridiculous," Robert muttered. "This is a modern jet. We don't have manual relay switches anymore." "With respect, sir," David said carefully, "Davidson Aviation's early jets had custom modifications. This model has a hybrid system. The secondary relay was added as a backup, but it's not connected to the main computer." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "How do you know about that modification?" "I read about your company's history," David admitted. "I always try to learn about the aircraft I work on." The truth was, David spent his evenings reading technical manuals and company histories in the library. While others watched television, he studied. Knowledge was the one thing no one could take from him. "Where is this relay located?" Emma asked. David pointed to a spot behind the fuel access panel. "It's behind that panel, tucked beside the main fuel line. It's small and black, about the size of a matchbox." Robert hesitated. Custom modifications were rare, and admitting they existed meant admitting he hadn't noticed them. But the clicking sound was real, and they were running out of time. "Check it," Emma ordered. Robert reluctantly removed the access panel. Behind it, exactly where David had described, was a small black box. The clicking sound grew louder now. "I'll be damned," Pete whispered. Robert tested the relay with a voltage meter. "It's failing, the connection is loose." The hangar felt suddenly still. Even James had stopped pacing. Everyone was looking at David now, not with dismissal, but with surprise and grudging respect. "Can you fix it?" Emma asked David directly. "Tie." David took a deep breath and reached for his tool belt. Unlike the senior mechanics, he didn't carry electronic devices or fancy diagnostic equipment. His tools were simple: screwdrivers, pliers, adjustable wrenches, and small brushes he used to clean parts. Everything was worn from years of use, but perfectly maintained. The hangar grew quiet, except for the distant sound of rain on the roof. David approached the jet and knelt by the open panel. The other mechanics stepped back, watching him with a mix of curiosity and doubt. He ran his fingers along the relay box, feeling for vibrations. "The problem might be deeper than just the relay," David said calmly. He removed the relay box and examined it closely. The clicking sound stopped. "This relay is responding to something else. Let me check the fuel filter system." "The fuel filters are fine," Robert interrupted. "We checked them first thing." David nodded respectfully, but continued his work. He reached deeper into the access panel, his experienced hands moving with purpose. His fingers found a small mesh filter tucked behind a bracket. Jet engines had multiple filters, and sometimes the smallest ones were the most important. "This secondary filter is clogged," David announced, holding up a small round screen. It was supposed to be silver, but appeared dark and dirty. "That's impossible," Pete said. "We didn't even know that filter existed." David smiled slightly. "It's not in the main manual. Your company's first jets had them as an extra safety feature. When they become blocked, they cause pressure problems that trigger the relay to click." While the mechanics discussed this discovery, among themselves, David worked methodically. He cleaned the tiny filter using a soft brush and compressed air. The hangar filled with the gentle hiss of air as he cleared away months of accumulated contaminants. Suddenly, loud voices erupted from the tarmac. 3 board members had pushed past James and were marching toward the jet. They wore expensive suits and carried themselves with the confidence of people who were never told no. "What is this delay?" the tallest one demanded. "We should have been in Paris by now. We're missing the entire evening reception," another complained. The 3rd board member pointed at David. "Why is that cleaner touching our jet? Get a certified mechanic immediately." David's hands faltered for just a moment. His face grew warm with embarrassment and anger. Years of insults and dismissal flooded back to him. His father had worked 2 jobs to support their family, only to face similar treatment. His mother had endured countless rude customers while cleaning offices at night. Emma stepped forward, positioning herself between David and the board members. Her voice was firm and clear. "This man is saving our trip to Paris. He has more skill in his little finger than you recognize in a person." "Emma, we can't afford this gamble," the tall board member insisted. "Call a proper mechanic. This is our future we're talking about." "This man is a proper mechanic," Emma replied, "and he's exactly who we need right now." The tall board member opened his mouth to argue further, but Emma continued. "David Thompson saved my cousin's plane last month. Her pilot told me how he diagnosed and fixed an electrical problem that 3 certified mechanics couldn't solve. He did it without fancy computers, just skill and experience." David hadn't known this. He had helped a pilot with a private Cessna at a small airport nearby, but he never learned she was related to Emma Davidson. Emma turned to the board members. "You can either trust my judgment and David's abilities, or you can find your own way to Paris. The choice is yours." The board members grumbled but stepped back. The hangar grew quiet again. David continued his work with renewed focus. After cleaning the filter, he carefully inspected each valve in the fuel system. Some needed minor adjustments to ensure proper flow. He turned tiny screws a quarter turn at a time, listening to subtle changes in the clicking pattern. "These valves haven't been adjusted in years," David explained as he worked. "Vibration during flight slowly moves them out of alignment. It's normal wear, but it affects performance." 20 minutes passed. David made his final adjustments and replaced the access panel. He stood up, wiping his hands on a clean rag from his pocket. "Try it now," he said simply, without drama or explanation. Everyone moved back as the pilot climbed into the cockpit. The hangar grew absolutely silent. Emma held her breath. The board members crossed their arms, still skeptical. The pilot pressed the start button. For a moment nothing happened. Then the engines whined to life. The powerful turbines spun faster and faster until a deep roar filled the hangar. The jet vibrated smoothly, like a purring cat. The roar echoed off the walls, bouncing from floor to ceiling. Fuel gauges showed perfect pressure, engine readings displayed in the green zone. The clicking sound was gone entirely. James stood with his mouth open. The other mechanics stared in disbelief. The board members said nothing, but their expressions had changed from anger to surprise. Emma smiled genuinely at David. Her eyes showed respect and gratitude. "How did you do that so quickly?" the pilot asked through the open window. David gathered his tools and placed them carefully in his belt. He thought about his answer before speaking. "I listen to engines like they're people," he finally said. "They tell you what's wrong if you pay attention. Every sound, every vibration has meaning. You just need to understand their language." The board members began moving toward the jet, their earlier complaints forgotten. They avoided David's eyes, perhaps feeling ashamed of their harsh words. Emma remained standing beside David. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You've saved more than just a flight tonight." The end David woke up at 5 a.m. as usual, but this morning was different. His wife, Mary, was already making coffee when he entered the kitchen. "You got a message on the house phone this morning," she said, looking puzzled. "From Ms. Davidson's assistant. They want you to come to their main office at 9 a.m. David's stomach twisted with nervousness. The main office was in central London, a gleaming glass building he had only driven past before. He put on his cleanest clothes, a white shirt and his one good jacket that he wore to church. The bus journey seemed endless. David watched the streets change from shabby residential areas to smart business districts. Other passengers in suits carried briefcases and spoke on expensive mobile phones. David clutched his small bag containing his lunch and wondered if he should have eaten before coming. At Davidson Aviation headquarters, the reception area was overwhelming. Marble floors reflected the ceiling lights and fresh flowers decorated every corner. A young receptionist with a perfect smile greeted him. "Mr. Thompson, Ms. Davidson is expecting you. Please take the elevator to the 25th floor." The elevator moved so smoothly, David barely felt it rise. When the doors opened, a woman in a navy suit met him. "I'm Sarah, Ms. Davidson's assistant. She's ready for you now." Emma's office was bigger than David's living room. Huge windows showed all of London spread out below. Framed certificates hung on the walls alongside photographs of various aircraft. Emma sat behind a polished wooden desk, but stood and smiled when David entered. "David, please sit down," she said warmly, gesturing to a comfortable chair. David sat carefully, worried he might soil the expensive furniture with his work-worn hands. Emma moved from behind her desk to sit in a chair facing him. "First, I want to thank you properly for yesterday," Emma began. "Because of you, we signed the Paris contract. It's worth £12 million to the company." David shifted in his chair. "I just did my job, ma'am. Please call me Emma." She smiled. "You did much more than your job. You solved a problem that stumped our entire maintenance team. But that's not the only reason I asked you here." David waited, his heart beating faster. "David, I've been talking to the board this morning. After yesterday, even the most stubborn members see what I've known since I first watched you work. You have extraordinary talent." "Thank you," David said quietly, still unsure where this was going. Emma leaned forward slightly. "We're expanding. We want to create a new department focused on developing innovative aircraft maintenance systems. Better ways to detect problems, more efficient solutions, smarter designs. We need someone who understands aircraft not just technically, but intuitively. Someone who can think differently." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I want you to lead this department, David." David felt as if the room tilted. Surely he had misheard. "Lead, but I don't have fancy degrees. I never went to university. I just have my basic mechanic certification." "You have something far more valuable," Emma replied. "You have instinct, experience, the ability to understand problems that computers can't detect. The board members who yelled at you yesterday, James, Robert, they're all asking how you knew about that relay system they had never heard of. They want to learn from you." David's mind raced. His mother had cleaned offices her whole life. His father had worked as a warehouse guard. They had sacrificed everything to give him a basic education. Now this? "My children," he said softly. "Sometimes they feel ashamed when their friends ask what their father does. They say their dad is just a mechanic and change the subject. They won't have to explain that anymore," Emma said gently. Tears welled in David's eyes. He thought of his daughter refusing to bring friends home because their flat was small. His son pretending not to know him when they passed each other near the school. "The salary would be substantial," Emma continued. "We're talking about leading a team, working on cutting-edge projects. You'd have your own research budget, your own office, access to any training you want." David wiped his eyes quickly. "When would I start?" "We need a month to set up the department properly. During that time, you'd transition your current work and help us recruit your team. You can choose people you trust, people who might have been overlooked like you were." David thought of young mechanics he knew, talented people stuck in low positions because they didn't have the right connections or expensive educations. "I'll do it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Emma. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." Emma stood and extended her hand. "Thank you for not giving up on yourself when others gave up on you." As David shook her hand, he realized his life had changed completely in 24 hours. He was the same man who had woken up yesterday, but the world now saw him differently. More importantly, he could finally see himself differently. The end 5 years had flown by faster than any jet David had ever fixed. His new department, which everyone called David's Lab, had become famous throughout the aviation industry. The small team had grown to 25 engineers and mechanics, working on innovations that made aircraft safer and easier to maintain. David's office was different from other executive spaces. Instead of expensive art, The walls displayed diagrams of new aircraft systems his team had designed. A workbench by the window was often covered with parts and tools. He still liked to work with his hands every day. One Tuesday morning, a young woman named Patricia presented their latest invention to the board. An early warning system that could predict engine problems before they happened. This system, Patricia explained confidently, uses sound patterns that Mr. Thompson taught us to recognize. It can detect failing parts weeks before they break, saving millions in emergency repairs. The board members nodded approvingly. These same people who had once questioned David's abilities now relied on his team's innovations. Even James, who had become David's strongest supporter, was taking notes. Later that afternoon, David made an announcement that surprised his team. "I'm going back to the hangar today just for a visit. Anyone want to come?" 10 team members volunteered immediately. They piled into 2 company vans, chatting excitedly about this rare trip away from the research laboratory. The hangar hadn't changed much. The same smell of fuel and metal polish filled the air. The afternoon sun streamed through the high windows, creating patches of light on the concrete floor. Jets of various sizes occupied their parking spots, looking sleek and perfectly maintained. David felt a wave of memories wash over him. He could almost see himself there 5 years ago, invisible to everyone but trying his hardest anyway. "This is where it all began," he told his team. "Right over there I used to clean my tools every night, and there's where Miss Davidson's jet had that fuel relay problem." As they toured the hangar, David noticed several mechanics working. Some were new faces, others were people he remembered from his time there. Tom, his old friend, now worked as shift supervisor. "David," Tom called out warmly. "Look at you in your fancy suit." They hugged tightly. "You still keeping this place running perfectly?" David asked. "Always," Tom grinned. "Some things never change." Near a private jet getting a maintenance check, David spotted a young black mechanic working carefully. The young man wore the same type of blue overalls David used to wear. He moved with precision, checking each part thoroughly. Something about him caught David's attention, the way he handled tools, the careful way he documented each check in a small notebook. The young mechanic looked up suddenly and froze. His eyes widened as he recognized David. "Mr. Thompson," he said excitedly, standing quickly. "You're my hero. I read about you in the newspaper last month. You're the reason I applied to work here." David smiled warmly. "What's your name?" "Michael." "Johnson, sir. I hope it's okay to say this, but you showed me that people like us can do more than just the basic jobs they give us. You made me believe I could be great at this." "Show me what you're working on," David said kindly, genuinely interested. Michael eagerly pointed to the engine. "I think there's a slight vibration issue here. The computer says everything's fine, but I can feel something isn't quite right in the mounting." David knelt beside him, running his fingers along the mounting points. He felt the same small irregularities Michael had noticed. "You have excellent instincts," David said. "This mounting has been over-tightened. It's creating stress that could cause problems later. How did you know?" "I felt the vibration when the engine test ran," Michael explained. "Just like you wrote in that interview, engines speak to us if we listen carefully." David's team members gathered around, impressed by the young mechanic's skill. "Michael," David said thoughtfully, "how would you like to visit our research department sometime? We could use someone with your careful attention to detail." Michael's face lit up with joy. "Really? Me? I'd love that." David looked at Michael and saw so much of his younger self. The passion, the careful observation, the hidden potential that others might miss. "You remind me of myself when I was your age," David told him. "Never let anyone make you feel small. Your hands can build the future. Every time someone dismisses you, remember that they can't see what you're capable of yet. But you can see it. Hold on to that." Michael nodded seriously, absorbing every word. As David's team prepared to leave, the hangar buzzed with the sound of engines being tested. Mechanics worked together, each respected for their skills regardless of background. David realized he hadn't just changed his own life. He had helped change the culture of the entire company. Now young people like Michael had examples to follow, paths to climb. Walking to the van, David thought about all the undiscovered talent still hidden in unexpected places. How many more Michaels were out there, waiting for someone to see their potential. He had opened a door 5 years ago. Now it was his job to keep it open for others. Every person, no matter their background, carried dreams that could change the world. All they needed was one chance to prove themselves, and someone willing to believe in them. The end.